Ah, the PC Engine. What a lovely, compact, yet powerful system. So nowadays you probably know that if you want to play some ROMs or other games on a flashcard on the PC Engine, you have a few options. The most recent one coming out in 2018 was TerraOnion's Super SD System 3, and that slotted in the back of the Core Graphics or Super Graphics or whatever, like this, and it could emulate CD-ROM games and also emulate HuCard ROMs. You don't have to put anything in here. But let's look at kind of the history and prehistory of PC Engine flash cards. There are a lot of well-known flash cartridges and copiers for especially the Super Famicom or the Famicom, but not a lot is well known about the ones for the PC Engine, so let's get into that. So what are some other flashcard options that we had before TerraOnion's system? Well, the most famous one was the EverDrive, made by Crix, and this was produced on many retro systems, and it's still for sale, and it runs on a micro SD card here. This is the version 1 which I have, and it looks like it came out in 2012, so from 2012 onwards we've had this option to easily load games from SD card, and that just slots into the PC Engine like that. It doesn't run any CD games, only HuCard ones. So before that, or maybe at the same time of that, we had other little bit more complicated options. For example, here is the Flash HuCard, an 8 meg flash cartridge by GamingEnterprisesInc.com, and this connected by USB, and it could only run one game at a time, but that was actually pretty perfect for homebrew developers, people who wanted to program on the PC Engine and then just upload their game this way. So I think this came out around 2013 or 2014, around the similar time as the EverDrive, but more specialized. And then going back a bit further, a Hong Kong company named Tototech was making flash devices and other adapters. And so here is their PCE Pro diving board shaped card. And as you can see, this connects via a PC's parallel port, and you had to use software that ran on a parallel, Windows XP or so, ran through the parallel port. It uses USB just for power, basically. And so it kind of hung out like that. This came out, I believe, around 2004. So in the early 2000s, this is what we had to use to run PC Engine games on it. This had a couple advantages. I mean, it had a menu, so you could choose you could upload a few games into the memory of this. It had a switch, an on-off switch for cheats. So it actually used IPS files, which would kind of include RAM hacks in HuCard games, and you could turn those hacks on or off to enable infinite lives or whatever kind of cheats that RAM hacks would use. So this was kind of useful for cheating in games, and the first version of the EverDrive and so on didn't have that. And of course the Super SD System 3 doesn't have cheats either. So kind of large and clunky, but yeah, back in the early 2000s and late 90s, this is what things had to use. They had to use mostly legacy parallel ports from PCs in order to upload games. So this was, around 2004, I think. Okay, and before that, PCEngine Pro by Tototech, maybe in the late 90s or early 2000s, I'm not sure when. That's when Tototech was starting to experiment with making PC Engine flashcards. And so the first thing they came up with, I think the first thing they ever came up with was this thing. Feast your eyes on this. This is obviously, homemade looking. They used a regular HuCard and probably took out the ROM and attached wires to its address and data lines. And to that, they glued a Game Boy Pocket Voice cartridge. So it's basically a Game Boy flash cartridge glued to the back of a PCEngine card, and it's using its flash memory for PCEngine Flash. I think with the switch here for USA and Japanese modes for the PCEngine. Yeah, this was kind of crazy. I bought this and it worked great. So this is the first time I ever could play, backed up or PCEngine ROMs. So I was happy with that. But yeah, its unwieldiness and clunkiness was pretty obvious. You can't mass produce this. How did this work? Well, step that aside for a second. Of course, to run games, you play it like this, with this thing hanging out. But to load PCEngine ROMs onto this, the PCEngine connector was pretty rare and hard to find. So any kind of slot like that was not available. So that's probably why this is here. You would have to use your old flash linker for the Game Boy, and this was a Game Boy flash cartridge parallel port linker. Oh, it's got a floppy disk in there too. So you would again connect this to your PC's parallel port, plug in an AC adapter, plug that in, and you would use special software made by Tototech that would upload the PCEngine ROM through this Game Boy interface, and then you could play PCEngine ROMs on this. So yeah, I think this is late 90s or really early 2000s. This was the state of PCEngine flash cards, back at the turn of the millennium. So yeah, count your blessings now, folks. So before that, what did people have? Well, here's where we have to go way, way back to around 1990. And that was when the Magic Super Griffin was released. And so this is a PCEngine copier for the core graphics, or yeah, white PCEngine. It has the same styling as the core graphics, so that's what I'm going to use. So yeah, this thing is quite large, and you could again connect it to your PC and download games through a parallel port through specialized software. But probably most people use this. It was a specialized floppy disk. So this is a PCEngine copier from 1990, which used floppy disks, 3.5-inch floppies. So I will soon get into the operation of this unit and its quirks. It's quite fascinating, and I believe they're pretty rare. They're hard. These things are hard to find, much harder than your usual Super Famicom copier, for example. So let's look into this big boy. So a tour of the Magic Super Griffin before I connect everything Voltron style. This is where your PCEngine HuCards slot in. It has two joypad connectors. I'll make a note later in the video if I can actually get it to do stuff. So parallel port I/O for communicating with the PC, and this is where the disk drive plugs into. It's got this thing which has to mate with the PCEngine. So it's got the HuCard connector, not very stably attached, and with a little bit of plastic supporting piece. The underside is, a bit molded to match the PCEngine. And this thing is, of course, for the joypad. So this plugs into the front joypad connector. And it looks like they used a, shielded DIN cable. And, well, it's a bit blurry, but they etched away some of the plastic there so it would actually fit in, which is pretty funny. This is a 9-volt power supply plug, and so the PCEngine power supply plugs into here and not into the PCEngine, and so here's a power switch and power LED. Some vents at the bottom because this thing probably gets hot, I'm pretty sure, yeah. And on the bottom, just some padding so it doesn't scratch your desk or whatever. And you can see here it says Magic Super Griffin by Front Far East, a well-known copier company. That's it. They're out of Taiwan. Okay, so first I'm going to plug in the PCEngine. Yeah, it's got a receptacle right at the bottom here. I'm not sure if you can see. That's where the that's a notch for where the power switch has to fit into. So I think it can't be turned on. It's got to be off. So you plug it in like this. You can see that the notch only goes with the power turned off, and that's the PCEngine plugged in. Yeah, so it kind of completes the circle, as you can see. So it's kind of weird. This thing powers the PCEngine, not from here and not with the power switch turned on the PCEngine, but it shoves power through the HuCard connector, which is both dangerous and unreliable. But I guess they did what they had to do. Yeah, I'll plug that in soon enough. All right, and our floppy disk drive uses a standard parallel style cable, and that plugs in here, the disk I/O. The connectors are kind of upside down, because I believe the whole PCB is upside down on this thing. So that's it plugged in. We're going to have to plug in the AV output here, and yeah, let's try to get this thing running and dumping a game and loading a game from our favorite floppy disks. All right. Okay, so I now have the Magic Griffin hooked up to the my PCEngine. I have a HuCard in there, and the disk drive is hooked up via the parallel cable. It has its own 9-volt AC adapter too. That's plugged in. And as you can see, the video cable is plugged in, but no power cable here. Everything comes in through the Magic Griffin and is shoved up that way. I did discover that, yeah, this actually is functional. The Player 1 controller goes inside this port, upside down. The cable connector is actually upside down. And this is actually a PCEngine tap. So this gives you a second player controller port. So that's kind of handy, actually. So yeah, you can play 2-player games just using the Magic Griffin. Okay, so I have an assortment of games. Let's turn it on and set it up. Power comes on, and it's on the screen. So let's look into that. Okay, so we have the Magic Griffin running, and there's no game card in right now, so it can't dump or save anything. So first we're going to format the floppy disk in there. And I'll fast forward past this a little bit. Okay, that's done. So I'll reset the unit and put in a 1 megabit card. So here's the first game, Sokoban World. So it's running. We've got to test to see if it's running. And then now we can actually save it to floppy disk. And so you can see here it sees that it's a 1 meg card. Just type in the name, and it saves it pretty quickly for a 1 megabit one. So then we'll try again with a larger HuCard, and that's Bomberman, that's 2 megabits. So kind of we got to make sure that it's actually running first before we can actually dump it. This Magic Griffin doesn't have any way to do a checksum on the card or anything, so if it's not quite working, sometimes it'll save it with glitches. So that's kind of the reason for incorrect dumps throughout the years. Just this way of dumping didn't provide any way to verify a cartridge, really. other than running it first and then dumping it, or dumping it many times. So we can see that we've already saved 2 files to the disk, Sokoban and Bomberman. We'll try again with a larger one, and so Gomola speed is 3 megabits. And it recognizes kind of weird sized ROMs like 3 or 6 megs, I think. Anyway, so you can save this, no problem. And so when it saves, it looks like it, when you hit start, or when you hit enter to save it to disk, it looks like it does about 16 blocks or so per megabit. So that's what the saving countdown defaults to, or whatever. Alright, next is a larger card, and it's PCEngine 2 at 4 megabits. So you can see that this Magic Griffin has 8 megabits of RAM, which is quite large for the day. I guess it was upgraded once, maybe. So here it's saving, but I think I'll fast forward a little bit. And so, yeah, there's no Hue card in there now. I've saved 4 files. As you can see here, the disk is mostly full. It's got 1 megabit left only. So let's load up what we've saved and see if it's a good dump. Yeah, so Sokoban World seems to run fine. So then we'll try the next one. Bomberman is next. Yeah, you can see, yeah, for 1 megabit it counts down from 16, for 2 megabits it counts down from 32, 4 megabits it'll count down from 64. So that seems to be the numbering system it has. Yeah, it's running fine, not much to say really. So although the PCEngine or TurboGrafx was somewhat minor, less popular in places like Asia or North America, I guess it was popular enough to get people wanting to have a copier for it, so they could distribute games on floppy disk or over BBSs and so on. So yeah, this would have been a great thing to have if you could afford it back in the early 90s. You'd build up a network of friends who could spread PCEngine games around, or order some from Japan and dump them and then send them on. So 3 megabit games, speed works fine. Yeah, and so PCEngine 2 works, but we're going to fast forward a little bit again. Yeah, the only bad thing was loading times and saving times, because it's floppy disk. But I think back then, we didn't mind so much. Yeah, PCEngine 2 works great. Right, so next we're going to do an 8 megabit game, which is Parodius. And so first we run it to see run the Hue card just to see if it's actually fit in properly into the Magic Griffin. And that works fine, so then we save it. And it detects it as an 8 megabit card. So I guess that's the maximum for dumping. I'm not so sure, but that's probably it. Now, if you listen carefully when it accesses the disk or when it's actually loading a game, you can actually hear interference over the audio, and I bet you that's because it is running, the Magic Griffin is running its power, 5 volt or 9 volt power through the card connector. So I think that high voltage it's extending the whole circuit of the cartridge bus. It's extending that into its own unit, so that introduces tons of interference from the Griffin into the PCEngine audio. And so that's kind of the downside. You can hear extra interference in this. So yeah, we've saved Parodius, and now we're going to load it again. So this is how long it takes to load from floppy disk. Yeah, there it is. So it's running fine. And so, yeah, the games that are saved to floppy disk, they're just, your standard PCEngine ROMs, except they have a 512-byte ROM header put at the front of the ROM. So that's where the ROM headers on PCEngine ROMs came from, systems like the Magic Griffin. So, if you see ROM headers on your PCEngine ROMs, take them off. You don't need them anymore. But if you want to run your PCEngine ROMs through a Griffin, if you had something like that, you would have to add the extra 512-byte header. And, well, you should search online to see what the header actually is composed of. But it's very simple, just a couple of hex bytes here and there. All right, so that was a look at the craziness, which was 1990s PCEngine Super Magic Griffin. And, well, these things were kind of legendary. I guess if you lived in North America or the UK, probably you heard rumors about these things from maybe friends or classmates who once lived in Hong Kong or who had family in Hong Kong or Taiwan, but you didn't believe them that you could back up TurboGrafx games onto a floppy disk. And that's only like a year after the Turbo came out and a few years after the PCEngine came out. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. In another video, I'm going to do a little follow-up on another kind of rare and very interesting copier, the Super Twin, and that'll be my next video, so look forward to that. Bye-bye!